It was Lord Eivor's mighty blade that took her head, but the fight was won together. His foe was beaten, but seeing what had been inflicted on Hilda and Krunk, Arlo's need for vengeance was only growing. Was already locked in battle with the Slither Scale. He would not survive long fighting alone. The young ranger was a fierce fighter, but no match for the Slither Scale. He barely thanked Arlo for helping him in this fight before he took off, seeking another. Could not leave him to fight alone. There was no stopping him until the Slither Scale was defeated. Slither Scale was defeated at last. The young ranger took no spoils, and with only a brief hoot of thanks, he was gone. Arlo hoped the ranger's thirst for revenge was finally sated. Was amazed the merman could swing his hammer, let alone see who he was hitting. A couple of thumps on the head soon brought him to his senses. Arlo tried not to think of how many friends, old and new, lay dead. He still had more to do. Backstabber lay defeated, and Arlo paid his respects to the beaver, who leapt up at Arlo's paw. Playing dead had spared his life. one beast could feel like an army. He wondered if he would get a bonus for felling this giant as well. The webbing was thick and tough, but their blades soon cut them to ribbons. Short Tongue sent the terrified frog toward Bogmire Forge. Another villager freed. They too headed for Bogmire, and Arlo wondered how many more frogs it could take. A dank and unsettling place. It had to be the Queen's lair. Arlo wondered what his father would say if he could see him risking his life for frogs. The Tailspinner Queen was dead, and the frogs were soon at work rebuilding the village. The warden was sure mammalian-amphibian relations would be forever changed. Together, they defeated the beast in a fury that sent all other bats from the ruin in terror. Robin was bereft. It was meant to be a simple hunt. He could not understand these flying abominations. Arlo offered what solace he could. Tuck was at Winter's Edge, where Robin could take some rest. pungent scent makes them easy to track. The few that were left were terrified. Arlo had no sooner realized who the culprit must be, and it was upon him, a mudwyrm of the deep. The cowgrub moved, lying helpless at the center of the nest. Arlo would have to deal with the mudwyrm first. Defeated, the Elder drew something from his cloak. Lorenzo's arm. He swallowed it whole. Arlo soon wished that had been the worst of it. The Wereowl was dead, and Arlo woke Lorenzo, who was as afraid as he was pained. Arlo sent the scared badger home where his brother was waiting to help him. Screech seemed to stir the very air into fury. This was not the wind, but the beating of leathery wings. camp leader was defeated, but they had to warn the rabbits. Darkwings were on their way. Kazakh had sent one of his strongest generals, Necromancer Gouraz. His defeat would rob the bats of a great weapon. Was safe in rabbit paws once more. Gray Ears swore that if the Warden of the Wastes ever called for help, the rabbits would answer. The burial chamber revealed both tales were true. A treasure hoard, and guarding it was the ancient Draugr Harat Bluefang. Fearsome warrior, now laid to rest. More importantly, Arlo had found his treasure. Doug was no match for Arlo's superior skill. Reggie could already see this would be a tournament that they would squeak of through the ages. Was a veteran too, used to fighting monsters and darkwings with ice under paw. Denis did not compare. Now the crowd cheered for him. In stature and skill, there was not a whisker between them. They shook paws in truce. No rat could doubt Arlo's worth now. Reggie said to meet him by the docks. Together, they would wipe out the Dark Wings once and for all. Together, they would attack Mount Cauldron. No stealth flaw, but an attack nonetheless. A band of warrior frogs harassing the village blacksmith. Their eyes lit up at the sight of Short Tongue, only they called him by a name which we need not repeat here. Short Tongue and Arlo returned the insult, and with more than words. The blacksmith was glad to head to Bogmire and safety. All should have been silent in the blacksmith's wake, but Arlo was suddenly aware of a squelching of mud around them. The stealth claw was here. They had won this round, but they could not leave it at that. Frog and Rat agreed to hunt the stealth claw to its lair. From afar, the villagers seemed lifeless. lost in battle or to the cold. But up close, the truth was revealed. They were training dummies. It was a trap. The assassin was vicious, but Frog and Rat held their ground. Injured, the attacker fled, but Short Tongue was not about to let him escape. The pair found him licking his wounds in a makeshift camp. The assassin seemed to forget his pain as he took up his weapon. With the assassin defeated, Arlo breathed a squeak of relief. But Short Tongue was not done. He needed to know who had sent them. The warlord sat surrounded by enslaved frogs and laughed at the pair's demands for their freedom. He had a surprise for his guests. The stench of the dungeon hit them as hard as its floor. A floor that started to shake, and from the shadows emerged the largest toad core that Arlo had ever seen. And Frog slayed the beast, its bloated corpse sinking slowly into the mud. Arlo felt a pang of regret. It had been a slave as much as the others. They found the warlord's soldiers celebrating the pair's defeat. Rat and Frog were happy to correct them. Seeing the last of his soldiers fall, Glubba croaked his rage. He was the greatest warlord of all frog kind, and they would regret this day. Glubba's tyranny had ended. Short Tongue offered the frogs a home at Bogmire Forge. Together, he and Arlo had freed the rift as well as the frogs. Perhaps this would be an era of peace for both. Inside the castle, they found themselves in the chef's store. Before they could be disgusted at the contents, they had to take care of the chef. They moved in step, a flawless dance of blood and vengeance. Neither knew that their own blood united them, but perhaps, just then, they felt it. Arlo found Rita battling the Darkwing Smith, but the Smith's mighty hammer soon overpowered her. Fought the Darkwing Smith. The fiery heat at the heart of the mountain burned hotter than any forge. Rita moved, clutching to life. Arlo ordered Erica to take her to camp. He would continue alone. They entered the huge throne room. They finally set eyes on the foul, laughing figure of Count Kazak, sat on his icy throne. Bertel kneeled exhausted before him. This pained the warden more than he could explain. Kazak left his beast to fight them. He had a king to kill. Arlo and Robin fought with all they had, their hope driving them on. The beast fell, but there was no time to rest. Leaving Robin to tend to Bertle, Arlo headed to the summit to find Reggie. The icy wind bit at his fur as he emerged on the peak. He saw, silhouetted in the mist, Count Kazak, and in his claws he held King Reggie, dangling over the edge. With a shriek of victory, the Count let go of the king and seemed to melt into the fatal mist. They flew into battle. The Warden and the Count's weapons clashed, echoing across the mountain. Count's corrupted body fell heavy on the ground. Arlo rushed to the edge, calling for the king, but the only answer in the mist was the icy wind. The war was won, but Arlo could not feel the victory. He barely noticed his friends join him. The Fellowship bowed their heads in honor of their brave king. The tale of this war would be as much of loss as of winning. They returned to the Crimson Keep in near silence, each with their thoughts. There would be no victory parades. Arlo heard a commotion ahead. In the throne room were raised voices. Bertle stood in front of Reggie's throne, holding the crown, asking who should now carry this burden. Denis barged forward to claim it. He was brother of the king. It was his by birth. Robin stepped forward and proclaimed that Arlo was rightfully king. Without him, there would be no kingdom to rule. He had proved himself on the peak. He was not alone. Leaders of the clans stepped forward and echoed their favor of the warden. Arlo objected. He had no claim here. Bertel slammed his staff into the floor to silence the rising voices. He had a secret to tell. Arlo's father was King Rattus. Bertel himself had delivered him as a child to the warden. He had a claim, if he was willing to take it. Arlo felt the truth of it, and the paw of destiny seemed to push him forward to take his place upon the throne. Bertel placed the crown upon his head. The weight of rule was his now. Denis had been forgotten in the shouts of joy from the clans. He raised his blade and swore vengeance. It was his birthright, and he would reclaim it from this usurper. Arlo set aside the warden and became the king. A new dawn broke over the land, bright and clear. The king sensed it would not last. The promise of his half-brother would surely mean war would come again. But that, as they say, is a tale for another time.